You're listening to the Platform Launchers podcast. I'm John Stange, and it's great to have you with us this week, as always, because here we talk about building and growing and monetizing your online platform. We talk about taking your passion, turning it into a platform so that you can earn a paycheck. I just finished a lovely conversation with our members club here inside Platform Launchers. They are live here on the call with me as I share some of these topics tonight. And I just want to encourage you, if you haven't had the opportunity to check it out, stop by platformlaunchers.com and you can take a free 2-week test drive of our members club. We're going to be, well, you'll see if you take that test drive, you have access to our full video vault and our guest expert videos that'll show you all sorts of different things about building and growing and monetizing your online platform. Also gives you free access to our launch plan course. And then you also receive the invitation to be able to join us live on these calls as we record the podcast live. We have all sorts of conversation before the podcast, and then we do a members-only Q&A right after the podcast episode ends. So lots of fun. You can find out more about it at platformlaunchers.com and just click the membership tab there, and you can jump on board with us, and we'd love to have you. And again, it's free for a couple of weeks, so give it a test drive. Try it out. Now, I mentioned at the outset here that we love talking about a variety of things here that have value, but this week we're talking about discouragement. And specifically, we're going to be talking about overcoming discouragement as an online business owner. Because maybe some of us have wrestled with this. This is certainly something that at different seasons in my life I've wrestled with, and there are others that are live here on the call that have wrestled with this. Whenever you attempt something new, you're engaging in something risky, and so you're setting yourself up for the potential of discouragement because you don't know if it's going to fail. You don't know if it's going to work. You don't know if it maybe is even going to be a major success. One of the fun things over the years of leading Platform Launchers is watching some of the risks some of our members have taken that have led to some major successes in their online business and online platform. I've loved seeing that. Obviously, we're all rooting for major successes when our own new ventures begin. But most of the time, that's not how it works, at least initially. Sometimes that takes a little while to reach. And if our new ideas don't go as well as we hoped, at least in the initial stage, I think most of us are willing to admit that maybe at least for a season, we might wrestle with some discouragement. So if that's you, if you've been starting something, attempting something, getting something new off the ground, and you've had discouragement strike, how should you respond? And what can you do to counteract the effect of discouragement on what you're building? Is there something that you can do that would be useful? Several weeks ago, I was actually speaking to an online business owner who was fighting discouragement. I think he has a very strong record of success. And in talking to him, we were kind of highlighting some of the things that have worked for him in the past. But he also started making a very common mistake. And I'm going to mention his mistake and just kind of point it out to you in case you've ever made this mistake as well. But he, in his context, he was starting to make the mistake of comparing what he had built to what others had built. And one key metric that I reminded him of was that his comparisons weren't really accurate, and his comparisons certainly weren't fair. Many of the people he was comparing himself to had been in business far longer than he had. And I think that this is a very common trap. I think a lot of times people find themselves comparing themselves to someone who's at a completely different stage of business or platform development or whatever it may be that you want to use as the word to describe this. We sometimes look at people that have a several-year head start on us, and we start comparing our platform or our business in its early stages to something that they've developed over the course of years, possibly even a decade or more. So I said to him, I thought he was needlessly discouraging himself. And I also was cautious to just let him know, look, if you keep this up, there's a big danger that you're missing here that you're not realizing as you preach this message to your heart. And the big danger is this: the likelihood of quitting is very high if he continues talking to himself the way he's been talking to himself. And so I just wanted to encourage him to stop thinking that way. Now, if you are easily discouraged, and if you typically respond to discouragement by quitting instead of adapting, I think you're going to have a very hard time gaining traction in your life and in your online business. You can't be somebody who quits. Can't be somebody who gives in to discouragement all the time. We all face the temptation to quit. And we all face the temptation to allow discouragement to have just kind of an overbearing part in our mindset when it comes to what we're building, but we can't let it. But if you're willing, when you experience setbacks and when you experience moments that you feel like, maybe these are things that are kind of dragging you down a little bit, if you're willing to reframe them and start referring to these things as teachable moments instead of disparaging setbacks, I think you could actually find that your setbacks are useful tools to help propel you forward. Let me tell you a little bit more about what I mean by this. This is how I've started to view some of my own setbacks. And, I don't know, maybe I should highlight some of my setbacks a little bit more here on this show and just in transparency talk about these things. But I have to tell you, there are plenty of things that I've tried throughout the years that have worked fine, and plenty of things that I've tried throughout the years that were total flops. And it's a mix. My business history, my online platform history is a mixture of those things, figuring out the things that work, accepting the things that don't. But I'm learning to view my setbacks as teachable moments. And I don't fear them the way I once did. So instead of framing these things in my mind as failures, I've started to say, all right, great, that didn't work. Now I know what doesn't work. Now I know what not to do. Now I know how not to spend my time or how not to invest my efforts. And then I use that newly gained knowledge to refine what I focus on so I'm not wasting time. I also use my knowledge of what doesn't work to then help me teach others and coach others, because I do a lot of teaching and a lot of coaching. And so if I could take my mistakes and then translate them into moments that allow me to coach others better or teach others better, I'm actually redeeming those mistakes by saving other people time. Other people can learn from my mistakes instead of repeating them. I can learn from my mistakes instead of repeating them. Every major milestone, every accomplishment in my adult life has come with some level of a setback or a moment of discouragement that I needed to fight through. And you're going to find the same is true for you. Every major milestone, every accomplishment, it's going to come with its own setbacks, and it's going to come with its own moments of discouragement. And you've got to fight through those things, because I have to tell you, just from personal experience, every time I've pressed on, every time I've refused to allow my discouragement to get the best of me, I've reaped rewards. And these are the rewards that I was working toward, the rewards that I was aiming toward in the beginning when I started whatever it was that I was attempting to start. So let me give you a few examples just from over the course of my life. Maybe you'll identify with some of these things. These are all meaningful things that have mattered to me that had moments of discouragement or setbacks along the way. I remember, in particular, fighting some discouragement when I was trying to date my wife. I was 18 years old at the time, and I remember in that season making it very clear to her that I liked her. But she was wisely trying to be cautious about who she dated, and we were still getting to know each other a little bit. And so sometimes it seemed to me like she was interested in me, and then other times it seemed like she wasn't. And then I remember at times when she would tell me things like, well, we were in college, and she's like, hey, I need to study, so I really can't hang out that much. And I wasn't completely sure if that was true or if she was just trying to brush me off a little bit. But thankfully I persisted, and just a few months ago, we celebrated our 26th wedding anniversary. And so, you got to press on through those discouragements to actually achieve what you're attempting to achieve. And in that case, it's been a lovely and meaningful marriage. But how about this? I remember fighting discouragement when I started my pastoral career. If you just started listening to this podcast, maybe you don't know this information about me. But in addition to the work that I do online with podcasting and writing and leading platform launchers, I've also been in pastoral ministry. This is my 27th year in pastoral ministry. And I remember fighting great discouragement when I started my pastoral career. I can remember in those early days, the church that I was leading was a church that really needed a good shot in the arm, something to kind of kickstart it. And I remember looking at those empty pews and wondering, am I ever going to have the opportunity to connect with people? Will these pews ever have people sitting in them, or am I going to be speaking to a mostly empty building? I remember I would wrestle with these things all the time. And the truth is, it took several years before I started to see the kind of momentum and the kind of growth that I was praying to develop in the church context. But I have to tell you, prayer and persistence paid off. So I'm glad I didn't give in to discouragement. I'm glad I didn't quit. And since that time, I've experienced a very meaningful church ministry. How about this? I remember fighting discouragement when I first started writing books. Many of our members are authors. Many of them are just involved in writing and creating good written content. And I remember when I first started writing books, I was convinced that the content I was creating was helpful, but I wasn't really sure how to connect it with actual readers. And in that time, when I first started writing, there wasn't, just an ease of marketing things like ebooks and different things like that. I didn't have a website at the time, nothing like that. Certainly wasn't podcasting even as an option to tell people about the books. There wasn't YouTube. There was nothing like that. So I was creating content, but I wasn't sure even how to market it. Wasn't sure how to actually reach actual readers with the content that I was creating. But I kept plugging away. I kept plugging away at writing. I kept plugging away at marketing. And then before I knew it, my book started finding their audience. And that same has been true. That same truth has been true with podcasting. Same thing has been true with blogging. Same thing has been true with other platform or business ventures. You got to fight discouragement at first so that you could actually get to the spot where these things are connecting with people. I would even say that the same has been true when it comes to financial investing. This past week, I was overseeing some of our financial investments, and I was looking at the charts, and sometimes the investments were up and sometimes they were down. Somewhere along the way, I heard that the only way you get hurt when it comes to that is if you jump off the roller coaster. So don't jump off the roller coaster, ride the roller coaster. Sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. That's true in investing, but it's also true when we're developing our online platforms and our online businesses, because there have been seasons of success and seasons of discouragement. I've experienced them both. You have too. But again, when we press on through the discouragement, we learn things that can really only be learned through time and through experience. And again, any success I've ever experienced has come on the other side of discouragement. Let me share a couple quick principles here that I hope you find helpful. A few practical thoughts on how to apply this. First of all, know this. In the midst of discouragement, I've been learning to become adaptable. I've learned to be adaptable. Sometimes my original plans were really close to being right. They just needed a little tweak, something to adjust them, but I was on the right track. And once those right adjustments were made, things started to take off. So sometimes it's just about being adaptable. Other times it could be about being teachable. Setbacks, what they do is they foster humility. I think setbacks can keep your heart soft. I think setbacks can help us recognize that there's more that we need to learn, more areas that we need to grow. And so I look at it this way. Instead of allowing myself to be overcome with discouragement just because something didn't work out exactly like I wanted it to, I'm learning to treat my setbacks as teachable moments. Moments where I can invite others to speak into my circumstances with their wisdom, moments where I could just step back and observe. But now, if you're presently right now, as you're hearing my voice or if you're watching us on YouTube, if you're going through discouragement right now, maybe you're asking the question, how can I press on past my discouragement in the present? What helps? Well, let me give you just a few quick pieces of feedback that I think will be helpful to you if you're ready to try and press on past your discouragement. The first thing is this: get some feedback from a like-minded community. I intentionally surround myself with people who love me and support me and feel free to speak honestly with me. I intentionally surround myself with people like that. I have people in my life who point out my blind spots. I have people in my life who help me brainstorm new ideas. I think my entrepreneurial friends also help me not to catastrophize my discouragements. Their counsel prevents me from thinking that my setbacks are the end of the world. By the way, shameless plug here for the Platform Launchers Members Club. This is one of the benefits of being part of the Members Club. You actually have the opportunity on a regular basis to get feedback from a like-minded community. It helps us press on through discouragement. And I think many of our members can testify that that's been useful for them. Here's another tool that you might find helpful. Number 2, reframe the way you talk to yourself about your setbacks. So when the setbacks come, reframe the way you've been talking to yourself about these things. The message you preach to your own heart, it matters. No one speaks to you as much as you have the opportunity to speak to you. Now, I know people who constantly put themselves down. and they treat their setbacks like proof that they've been failures. And I have to tell you, that's not a very helpful thing to do. But what is helpful is to reframe the way you're talking to yourself so that you begin to understand the helpful ways that your setbacks might be setting you up for future success. So celebrate the fact that you're willing to take risks. Celebrate the fact that you're willing to try new things. Don't beat yourself up when you stumble onto an idea that doesn't work as well as you initially thought that you would. Reframe the way that you've been talking to yourself about your setbacks. Another point that I'll throw out here, I have one more after this as well, but my second to last point is this: don't wrap your sense of personal identity around your successes or your failures. If your sense of worth or your perception of who you are, if it always comes back to where you win and where you lose, you're going to drive yourself crazy. What you do and who you are two very different things. If your sense of identity is tied to your platform or if it's tied to your business, then you're going to grow arrogant when it hits high points, and you're going to grow mortified or discouraged when it hits low points. And I would contend that we should not torture ourselves like that. Your value as a person has nothing to do with the popularity of what you produce. And let me say that again. Your value as a person has nothing to do with the popularity of what you produce. There are going to be high points and there's going to be low points. Don't tie your sense of personal identity to your successes and to your failures. Who you are and what you do are not the same thing. One more thing, and this is where you're going to see some of the spiritual application that I want to make to this particular concept. And this is something that makes a huge difference in my own life. I hope it has an impact on you as well. Have faith that this is all part of a plan that leads to something better. Start thinking about your life that way. Have faith that this is all part of a plan that leads to something better. Now, I have to say, as a person of faith, I have to confess that it helps me immensely to just know that there is a bigger plan in motion than I can orchestrate or figure out. I regularly experience moments of discouragement in my life. I regularly experience moments of discouragement in my business and also in platform development. But because my faith that God has a bigger plan for it all is intact, those moments of discouragement do not lead to turn or do not need to turn into long seasons of discouragement. They could be a moment of discouragement. It doesn't need to be something that drags on forever. And the sooner I remember that something better is going to come from the setbacks and the trials that I'm experiencing today, I think the faster my feelings of discouragement leave me. It's one of those things that I have found it immensely helpful to just have faith that this is all part of a plan that leads to something better. So let me wrap up by mentioning this. Wherever you are in the process of building an online platform or a message-based business, wherever you are in that process, I truly hope you take this message to heart. Stay teachable. Become adaptable. Don't let discouragement rob you of joy when you're building something valuable. Give yourself time to let this work. Let yourself learn the lessons that you'll learn along the way as you focus on these things and try new things. But recognize this is all part of a bigger plan. There's going to be things that you learn. Sometimes you're going to learn it the hard way, but it's going to be a benefit and it's going to be a blessing to somebody else as you internalize these things and then have the opportunity to teach and coach others and even refine the platform or the business that you're looking to build. Before I finish up this week, I just want to invite you one more time to stop over to platformlaunchers.com. We'd love to be able to connect with you over there. And again, I would sincerely hope that you would consider taking the 2-week test drive to become a member in our members club, because that's a great antidote to discouragement. You're going to find yourself surrounded with some pretty high quality people that are trying to do the same type of things that you're doing. And yet they operate from an encouraging and uplifting standpoint. I know I'm uplifted every time I get to interact with our members club, and I know you will be as well. So again, head over to the membership page at platformlaunchers.com, and we'd love to see you there. But that's it for us this week. Thanks again for tuning in, whether you are on YouTube or whether you're listening to us through your favorite podcasting app. We're glad to have you with us this week. We hope you have a wonderful week. And in the meantime, get a lot done. Don't get discouraged. And we will see you right here next time. Take care.